Welcome back, everybody. This is the Dustdevils Coffee Hour. I'm your host, Samuel Flores, the program manager of the TAMIU Aries Grant, and I'm joined today by Dr. Soto Vasquez, assistant professor of communication.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
I was super excited when you told me to interview.
Yeah.
Only thing is, you were like, all right, make sure you wear casual clothes. And I had no idea what to do.
Yeah.
I was thinking about it all morning, but I think I got something down.
Yeah, you got it down. You definitely got it down. Yeah. I wonder why. Why did you have trouble?
Because I feel like I feel more comfortable just wearing a suit. It's actually easier to plan out the outfit, right? Because
Really?
all you need is a clean shirt, really.
That's true.
You know?
Okay.
And so it's like, all right, I got a clean white shirt. I know which suit I can throw it on. Boom, easy to go.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
here, you got to plan out a little bit of everything, and I was struggling a little bit.
Really? To me, it's like the opposite, right? Like, I don't think I can like choose a suit, especially because like my wife says I can't see colors.
Yeah.
So like sometimes I'll put like what I think are blue pants and a blue like suit, and turns out it's different colors, and then I end up looking stupid the entire day.
Or have you ever done like black pants, and then you thought you were putting on black socks, and then you look at them, you're like,
Yeah, 100%, 100% happens all the time.
Yeah.
Especially in job interviews, which is kind of embarrassing. I'm
Right.
walking in there and then they're like, okay,
yeah,
we know what to expect.
But no, thanks for having me. This is a good time to chat, and I want to thank you for thinking of me.
Yeah, of course.
Cool.
We know students might be interested in this, so we wanted to invite you. You're our second guest. So like I told you earlier today, we actually posted on Instagram if people had questions for you.
Uh-oh.
So I'm just gonna start with like a little fun question.
Okay.
Actually, and I have them right here. So the first question I got, it's what's your go-to song to jam out to?
Let's see. Okay, well, I have to say my musical interests have changed a bit since I met my fiance. I remember when we were on our first date about 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago now. I asked her, well, what is your music of choice? What do you like to listen to, right? And she kind of was like, didn't really say much, kind of quiet. And I was like, wait, what? And she said, well, I actually listen to mostly Broadway show tunes.
Oh.
So yeah, recently that's been kind of something that does come up more often.
Yeah.
I will say right now, some of my go-to music, I've actually really been into Steve Lacy and listening to his recent song. I don't remember the name of the title of it, but it's like the top 50. It's in the top 50 right now.
Really?
On Spotify.
Wait, Steve Lacy, is that the I Wish I Knew?
Yeah,
right?
that one. Yeah.
Okay,
That's a good song.
Yeah.
Otherwise, go-to music. I always try to play a little bit of music before class to kind of relax everyone. I've always liked the Strokes. Strokes is like one of my go-to bands. Vampire Weekend, also Elton John, Billy Joel. So that's kind of the rotation. But recently, Broadway's been kind of creeping into the rotation.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I know, like, now that you mention it, you've been helping my grant, right, with the workshops. And I remember, like, right before a workshop would start, you would put some music, some background music.
Yeah. That's a song from a band called Two Door Cinema Club.
Okay, yeah.
And I think it's called Something Good Can Work, but I use a remix that I really like. And I feel like it kind of, wakes people up a bit, but also signifies that, like, okay, we're going to be having fun, we're going to be learning together, but at the end of the day, it's play too. Like, we're not trying to take it too seriously.
Yeah.
So it's a mix of doing both of those things, because that's really, I think, where, in my experience as an educator, students can feel comfortable and feel like they can make a mistake and learn from it, because that's what we're here to do ultimately at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But also have fun at the same time too. And I always tell students, like, look, I'm not here to test you on what you know. I'm here to test you on what you can learn, right? And so that usually, I think, takes the pressure off a bit of like assignments and stuff like that, I think. So anyway, wait, we were talking about music, right?
Oh yeah. But like,
Yeah.
That's what it is. Like, it's interesting that you bring that up, because I think, like me with music, right? Music sort of brings in some like energy, some atmosphere, and you're trying to create this like safe atmosphere for the students through the music.
Yeah. I think one bias sometimes we have, especially as us as educators, is we do limit ourselves to like the five senses, quote unquote, right? And or just PhDs, educated folks, those of us who've gone through this process, sight, sound, those kind of things, right? And we like to trust what we can read and see, right? But I think there is an element to, this like other senses out there, right? Where things are like the vibes.
Yeah.
or the
Yeah.
feeling of
Yeah.
the room, right? We can touch, we can kind of, those things are palpable sometimes.
Yeah.
But it's hard to describe them. And so, students like to, especially younger folks right now, like to say like, oh, the vibes are weird, or, right, the mood.
Yeah.
But I think it's a real thing. And so I think music is a good way to kind of set the tone and have people relax and ready to learn.
Yeah. Now that we're like in the topic of music, I was reading through your blog yesterday.
No. Oh, no.
We do our homework here in the Dustdevils Coffee Hour podcast. I did notice that you wrote an article about latinx music and how they're curating playlists. Can you tell me more about that?
This was some work that I started in grad school. And I should state this, that blog is probably about 5 or 6 years old at this point. And I was interested at the time with how a lot of different musical genres that represent the diversity of Latin America, from salsa to reggaeton, were grouped under this larger category of Latino music or Latin music, right? And the reason why I was interested in that is because at the time I was doing a lot of work on Latino political communication, and there's that same overlap, right, where people who are Mexican American are grouped with recent immigrants from Guatemala, grouped with people from Puerto Rico, under this huge umbrella of being Latino, Latina, Latine, Latinx, right? And so I saw some overlap there. I would update what I was saying, 5 or 6 years ago now that I think you have stars like Bad Bunny,
right,
who really kind of crossed over and I think do kind of earn the title of like sort of a Latin pop artist. I mean, he's even bigger than that, right?
Yes.
But yeah, it was interesting to me at the time that all these different diverse musical stylings were just grouped under the same label, just because they all were in the same language, the Spanish. And really, like, there is a lot of difference between, Mexican boleros and reggaeton, right? I mean, they're totally different genres. So that was kind of the argument at the time, but I think the musical scene has changed a lot since then as well. Yeah.
So you did that when you were in UT? Or?
No, that was at American University
in Washington.
Yeah. I tried I did a seminar paper for one of my classes. It was actually, I think it was my, it was like our intro theory class. We had to write a seminar paper, and my professor at the time, Professor Aram Simrick, was always interested in music and sound studies, and so I wanted to try to meld those two interests I had. And that's actually, I think, the only seminar paper from grad school that never was published. I tried it, everything else got along somewhere, a book chapter, an article, a dissertation, somewhere. That's kind of the only thing that's never really seen the light of day. So
really?
Yeah.
Were you thinking of going back to it?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I don't know. No. Maybe. Yeah. We'll see someday. So I just published something actually with, or it's about to come out, with a current master's student of mine, or actually just graduated rather. And it's a version of his thesis, which looks at the evolution of the music scene here in the rock music scene here locally in Laredo.
Oh.
Yeah. Oh. And so we're pretty excited about that. Yeah, and there was a little bit of crossover from some of the stuff that that I studied back then to now. So
yeah, that sounds pretty dope. Now that we're like sort of in the topic of music again, I kind of
we're stuck on the music topic.
Yeah, actually, I really like music, cool. So I'm enjoying our conversation. But one thing I wanted to ask you about is like, do you enjoy Latinx music? Because like the genres you're telling me, they're more like, well, to me, I'm probably gonna not know the genre correctly, but like Two Door Cinema Club, Vampire Weekend, like you're telling me, they're completely different from this type of music. Do you enjoy this type of music too? I do, and so I wouldn't say I love it as much as I love those other genres. And I've had always kind of like phases. I don't know if people have ever experienced this, right? Where it's like super into, like in college, I loved just like hip hop. Yeah. And I'd listen to that all the time. Grad school, I really liked alternative music. That's alternative rock. I would classify that as. Then about 2 or 3 years ago, I really kind of stopped listening to music as much as I used to, and I got more into just podcasts, to be honest. Yeah. And I've only been recently kind of re-listening to music. Honestly, it's been mostly either oldies or like top 40 stuff. Like I secretly really like Dua Lipa, not so secretly. But yeah, I've always appreciated. I've always liked music in Spanish, what we would call kind of Latin genre music. I think specifically, I'm trying to think of a couple artists.
I loved Juanes, for example.
Oh,
Like Juanes was one of my favorites since
La
middle
Camisa
school.
Negra.
Yeah, La Camisa Negra, right?
Yeah.
And I actually got a chance to see him. Seen him a few times actually, both in El Paso
Yeah.
and at Austin City Limits Music Festival.
Mm.
So I've always appreciated it. I like when they cross over to one of my guilty pleasures is artists covering Spanish language music in English or vice versa.
Oh.
So like when a Spanish language artist does like an English language
Yeah,
song, I always think
yeah.
that's super cool when
Yeah,
they do that.
yeah.
So yeah, I've always liked them, but I think my heart lies with alternative rock.
Alternative rock.
Truly, yeah.
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 Yeah. I think I'm the same way. But this whole summer I was listening to Bad Bunny, so
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't know.
and like, here's the thing, man. Like, advertisers and marketers will often think, okay, a person is Latino, Latinx, they must listen to these genres,
Yeah.
right? And so we're gonna market to them that way. But the true complexity of life is that, if you're a Mexican American, you're or any other identity here in the United States, like you have multi-layered things you like.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? We can like Bad Bunny and The Strokes,
Yeah.
and that's cool. That's
Yeah,
fine.
yeah.
And Broadway apparently. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Let me segue into our next question here.
Sure.
Let's do something a little bit more. Nah, not serious. Let's go.
All right. Now,
Yeah.
no seriousness
Yeah,
here.
no
This is
seriousness
just hanging
here.
out time.
Exactly. We're hanging out.
Yeah.
Who is your favorite Avenger and why?
Okay. Dang. I don't know who sent that in, but I've always been a fan of Captain America.
Oh,
In the movies.
okay.
Um,
Okay.
I like the mix of, I think early on, how he's kind of portrayed as a little bit out of his element, out of his time, adjusting to the world that he's in now versus the values and expectations he used to have,
Yes,
right?
yes.
In like in the World War II era. But then he kind of grows up and, he sees that some of the things he normally would trust a lot. I'm thinking of particularly like Winter Soldier,
Right. Yeah.
where he's primed to trust the government inherently because he's a soldier.
Yeah.
But he realizes that there's this immense like power system out there that sometimes even people in government aren't aware of and fully able to control.
Yes.
And he realizes that, okay, actually being a good person doesn't mean necessarily trusting, these power structures implicitly. And so he has to kind of unlearn those things. He grows into leadership. But he never kind of lose sight of the values that he has in terms of being a representation for good. And I think that's on one hand, the intellectual kind of reasons why I like him. Emotionally, my mom also likes him a lot.
Oh, yeah.
And my fiance does too.
Yeah.
So like I can't not root against him.
Exactly.
So yeah, he's probably my favorite. I would have to argue. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah. So I'm glad that we did the little Captain America. And
Oh yeah, look at that.
Yeah.
Wait, who's yours?
Mine?
Yeah.
Oh, Spider-Man.
Is Spider-Man Avenger though?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess they made it official.
Yeah. I mean, he's like the youngest one, but yeah.
Okay,
Like-
Spider-Man is up there for me as well. I like Doctor Strange too.
Doctor Strange. Yeah.
Yeah,
I just feel Spider-Man's like more relatable. He's
definitely.
like a kid who pretty much doesn't know what's going on.
Yeah,
It's me all the time.
It doesn't change.
Yeah.
Let me tell you that.
All right. Actually, you when you were talking about the movie,
Yeah.
I saw you were like very passionate about your description of it, of
Sure.
why you like them. And then I looked at your phone right now, and you have a little sticker from Laredo Film Society.
Yeah.
Is this something you participate in a lot?
Yeah, so I'm actually a board member of the Laredo Film Society
Oh.
at the moment, and yeah, I'm very passionate. I think those of us in academia, those of us here, as professors at TAMIU, we need to be involved in the community.
Yes.
And it can be however we want it to be. That's kind of the beauty of being involved. You get to do, what you like to do. And so, being a professor, I think it involves a lot of things, but one of them is you're doing a lot of stuff on your own sometimes, which is writing papers, writing grants.
Right.
And a lot of it is solitary. It doesn't always have to be. I mean, of course, we're in the classroom too, but even then you're still prepping your classes alone. You're grading alone.
Yes.
So I've always tried to find things that get me out of just that space and help me be involved. And for me personally, I always liked the media, film, stuff like that. And so I had the opportunity to join up with the Film Society here locally. Partly, I know the people who are doing it, they're great folks. And it's been a really awesome journey, just learning how to run an organization. What are some of the kind of peculiarities of doing a 501c3, essentially with no staff, and raising money and going after grants and putting on events, all those things. It's super, super interesting. And yeah, I always feel a little weird in the group because I do like film, but I tend to like things like the Avengers.
Yeah.
Disney movies.
Yeah.
I like, what else do I really like? I do like Martin Scorsese films a lot.
Okay,
It's one of my favorite. Like the mafia drama.
Exactly. Yeah.
One of the best.
Yeah. I agree.
One of my favorite films is The Wolf of Wall Street.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
probably in the top 3. Yeah. But those are the kind of films I like, and they're not always considered, I guess, the most like avant-garde, artsy kind of art house cinema club films, So I do feel sometimes like maybe that's not what I bring to the table, but I feel like I do other things in the org, so that makes up for it.
Yeah. I get you. You might think like some of them might be like Scorsese when he talked about the Marvel films, saying that they weren't films, that they weren't movies. Yeah.
That's I kind of agree with him though.
Yeah.
They're movies. Right. I don't know if you want to call them film. I don't know what you think about that. What's your opinion on what he said?
I kind of agree with it too.
Okay.
But at the same time, like, I don't know. I would like to say that the success of these films makes them a good film. But I'm not the artsy type for me to tell you that's not a film.
Sure. Yeah.
It looks like something overly commercialized, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, but all film is commercialized,
Exactly.
right? It just by virtue of having to raise so much money to put on a film.
Yeah.
It is a commercial venture. Yeah.
I saw this take, right, like on another podcast. The guy said Avengers Endgame was the best film that we've ever made, and it was just like the emotion that Endgame invokes in the audience. It was like 10 years of a build-up to get to that one moment where Captain America just goes assemble, and then, like everybody goes crazy in the theater, and he's like, no film could give you that sort of emotion.
There was nothing like it.
Exactly.
I mean, I think to an extent you had early versions of it with like the Star Wars original trilogy, Harry Potter, but those are all film franchises, and you're right in that sense. Yeah. Absolutely, because or the person that you heard this on the podcast is absolutely right.
Yeah.
Because it was truly unique, right?
Yeah.
Building up to this moment for so long, but I see where Scorsese comes from in the sense that, okay, that is not traditional film, right? A film is a or maybe how he sees it is a contained story in one kind of episode, right? Or one film, right? And the Avengers saga really draws a lot on also television, right? Serialized storytelling, where it's kind of like, it always teases you at the end for the next one, right? And I think that was the cool part about it, right? Feeling like, oh wait, that person's going to come out, or so and so, right? So I think the harshest criticism, and I think there's some validity to it, and let me explain kind of my thinking here, is that these films are more like an amusement park,
right,
than true cinema, quote unquote. And I can sympathize intellectually with that, right? Because I think a lot of times we can look at our culture and we get this sense that it's a version of something else. It's a copy of something else. It's a play form of something else.
Yeah.
And while these films are very, great, they are engaging. You're invested in the characters. It does feel like it is overly commercialized. It always feels like delayed gratification for the next film, except for maybe Endgame, right? Yeah. And so I sympathize with that perspective. But for me, like, I can enjoy both.
Yeah.
I can watch the Avengers, and then I can go watch a mid-budget artistic film. But there is the argument out there that the crowding out of the media marketplace is pushing those mid-budget films that used to be out, essentially. So, yeah.
I think eventually we'll just sort of like go back, because we'll get tired of the whole Avengers. Like, I kind of feel people are kind of tired of that already. Yeah. We're kind of tired of Star Wars. We're tired of all these big media franchises. So slowly we'll get back into the new stuff, or artistic stuff.
And think about it, like, what's the biggest film of 2022? It's Top Gun, Maverick, right? Yeah. And it is a franchise film, but it's also really a reinvention. It doesn't use a lot of CGI. It has more practical elements to it. And I don't know about you, when I saw it felt very like,
oh yeah,
like whoa,
that
like,
movie was dope, dude.
yeah, it was cool. Yeah, and I remember looking over at my fiance while we were watching it, and she was doing the not looking and the, you know, because it was so intense. And I think, you know, that experience in the theater is something people want, and hopefully we'll come back, because I think that was a really good kind of film.
Yeah.
So cool.
It was a lot of years in the making, but yeah.
Worth
I really
it.
love that film.
Absolutely.
You know that we're talking about films and music. I know that you got your master's degree in media production.
Media studies.
Media studies.
There you go.
Okay,
Almost.
there we go. I was close.
Almost the homework. Got it
close.
right.
Yeah. Okay, I failed. All right. No. What made you interested in that?
I guess talking about my journey educationally, I was political science undergrad, and I didn't, you know, while I appreciated the education I got, I did learn how to write really well. I didn't quite get the content that I was looking for, what I was getting into, and that's okay. Like, I still have always liked politics and you know, presidents and stuff like that, right? Anyway, so my senior year of college, I had a couple extra credits, and I wanted to take two things. I wanted to take like a history of Latin America class and some kind of communication course. And so I had the chance to actually take gender communications. This was at St. Edward's University. And it really just opened my eyes to the ways in which people come to think about things, how they learn about the world. Because media is such a huge, important element of all this, right? We've just been talking about media for so long.
Yeah.
And so I took a year off, worked on a political campaign, and I knew I wanted to go to UT. Just because that was one of my dream schools for a long time, right? The reasons why we do things are often just really like arbitrary.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, I like that school. Or you know, in high school, I really wanted to go to Notre Dame University because I saw the movie Rudy. Oh. You know, and they were doing good in football that year. It's just, you know, it's not like super well thought out, right?
Yeah.
And so I knew I'd always wanted to go to UT, and I started to get more and more interested in communication. At UT, at the time it was called the College of Communication, now it's the Moody College. They actually have quite a few different degree paths that you could go through if you wanted to study communication at the graduate level. But for me, there was really a couple of options. It was either comm studies, media studies, or journalism. And I figured I was actually closer to comm or media studies. My PhD is in comm. But I was just interested in media because I liked, you know, film, I liked music, I like all those kinds of things. And that's really honestly it wasn't super well thought out. Again, that's the point.
Yeah, you kind of just jumped into it.
And then made sense of it afterwards, right? And I loved it. I had a great time with it. Again, the only thing that I missed, and I had to make my own, and this is common, right, in everybody's journey, is then I was missing the political element to communication and media. Because it was mostly industry, entertainment focused. So I was like, I still had all this background of political stuff. So I said, okay, well, let me try to marry those two things. And I did a PhD program at American University. And even though it's comm, what they really wanted to call it was media, technology, and democracy.
Wow.
So they did that just for our sake when we go into the job market. But that's really kind of married everything together and also brought in this technology element. And I think, you know, if you look at my scholarship, I try at the best to like do all those things, right? I do political comm, I do technology studies, I do pop culture when I want to. So, you know, I feel like I don't have to silo myself off into one particular area. And, you know, things change too. Like I can reinvent myself when I feel like it. So, but the other nice benefit of doing media studies is if I go see a movie, I count it as working. So in my head, I'm like, I'm working. I'm putting some hours in. So if I'm playing a video game, no, I'm just kidding. And then my fiance's like, no, dude, that's pushing it.
Did you always know that you were gonna like or do a PhD, or did this happen when you were during your master's degree?
Yeah, pretty much. And you know, when I was an undergrad, I thought I was going to be a lawyer and go to law school. I took a couple LSAT prep courses, and I didn't really find it that that interested particularly.
Right.
Now I think I might be interested in going and getting a law degree.
Oh.
I mean, who knows someday. But yeah, I was doing my master's. I had my advisor, I think just kind of, off the cuff said, hey, are you going to apply to our PhD program at UT? And I was like, I haven't thought about it, but that kind of just question made me think about it, right? Which is the beauty sometimes of us, what professors can do.
Yeah, yeah.
We don't really realize it, but like an offhand comment can totally change someone's life and career.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I knew I wanted to go to DC and live there for a bit. I'd never really lived outside the state of Texas. I'd visited other places, but I wanted to live at DC. And this was like 2015, 2016, 2017.
Yeah.
Interesting time in DC,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We could talk about that later.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to get out there, so I applied to their PhD program, and I got excited. One other thing that they offered was they offered a 3-year program of doing a PhD.
Yeah.
I did have a master's already, so technically it's 5. But yeah, I was able to actually do the PhD in 3.5. The third year I worked at a community college in El Paso, where I'm from, and in the last half year I was already working here, and so that gave me a lot of good experience teaching. And again, but it wasn't like a plan, it wasn't like I'm going to grow up and do this. It's just something that I kind of stumbled into.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm still figuring it out, which is life, right?
Aren't we all? Yeah.
Yeah, so.
How was Washington? Like those 3 years you were there?
Okay, let me give y'all some. I was thinking about this on the ride over, and I was like, here's the most common question that you get when you're in DC. It's like this first or second thing people ask you, and they ask you, what do you do? Right? You introduce yourself somewhere, and it is a city that's great, I think, for young people to live in, just like New York, LA, Austin, wherever, these big cities. Because it shows you what the competition's like, essentially.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
That it's a competitive world out there, and people are going after things. And I do remember, going to great events, seeing the culture, seeing political events happen around me. It was awesome. It was a cool feeling and experience. And so I think it was very foundational to what I do and how I see the world. At the same time too, like, you kind of see the mask, the thing behind the mask of what power is like in this country, which is, there's decisions made, but it's not always by the people and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah.
And because there's a lot of power and money out there. I'd go to events sponsored by corporate this, corporate that. You go to big conventions, and table at the front is corporation 1, corporation 2.
Yeah, yeah.
I also remember introducing myself to people sometimes and saying like, hey, I'm a PhD student at American University. And I could already see their eyes like glaze over and look and be like, hey, I'll be right back. Because they wanted to talk to somebody else.
Oh,
because I was
okay.
just a lowly student, right?
Yeah.
And didn't work for the White House or Congress.
Yeah.
So it was a good eye-opening experience in that sense. I wasn't there very long, unfortunately. But to contrast, I think, here in Laredo, and even where I'm from, El Paso, like the number one question people ask you when you meet someone isn't like, what do you do?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, how often does that come up? Not right.
Not a lot. Yeah.
Differently, right? They ask you where you went to high school.
Yeah.
Right? Which is a different way of getting information.
Yes.
It's more about like, hey, where are you from? What's your background? What's your class status? Not what you do. But it shows, I think, the difference in culture of even different places in the United States. So, but it was a good experience overall. Yeah.
Was it like a big culture shock when you got to Washington, or?
Not too much. Not for me personally, because I lived in Austin.
Right.
And so I was around, the capital and stuff like that. So it wasn't too.
Oh, well,
too
that's
different.
true. It's probably like the same vibe.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. There was a bigger jump, I think, for me from El Paso growing up to Austin, but I had more time to adjust, and so.
Well, how was that adjustment?
I was in school, so it was a little bit easier.
Yeah.
It's kind of a little bubble, and then you explore out of it. Not too bad. The bigger cultural shocks has been when I've gone abroad for a little bit, which is something I'd recommend for every young person, which is go out there, go to another country, see what the world is like.
Yeah, yeah.
Because it gives you a better sense of what your own life is like, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
yeah.
Or where you're from is like. So yeah. New York is another cool place if you can't get abroad. Like, just go there. It's another culture in of itself. Yeah.
I got the same vibe when I went to San Francisco
Okay.
last year. I was like, whoa, this is completely different from what I know. Like the biggest city I had gone to at that time was Monterrey, Nuevo León.
Got it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's like it was very, very different from what I'm used to. So I do agree that students should travel more.
It's a good
Yeah.
experience, and I mean, there's opportunities here at the university. One of my dreams or plans that I keep putting off every year is to propose a study away program, but have it in D.C. and New York over the summer, right? Because not everybody can go to another country,
Yeah.
and those would be slightly more affordable. Who knows if they would be?
Yeah.
Things are super expensive.
Yeah.
But also to just expose students to a different something.
Yeah.
See what the rest of the country looks like,
Yeah.
and have a sense of what things are. Actually, speaking of Laredo Film Society, we're having some students come in a few weeks from Dartmouth, and they're visiting the border, and they're going to be dropping in, and I think it's a really cool opportunity for them to see what this part of the country is
true.
like, and there's a few folks from Texas in there, but I think there's so many perceptions of what the border is like.
Yeah.
That aren't based in
Based
reality.
on like what media sort of
The
feeds
news,
to them.
all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. So I think it'll be a cool experience for them.
Okay. Let me go to our
Sure.
final question because I know we're running a little bit on time, but
I talk a lot, apparently.
no, you're good. What's your favorite research topic that you've ever done?
Like I said, I do a lot of stuff that can be considered a little bit eclectic, right? I think broadly I look at like how media shapes who we are, our identity. Mostly that's been in like the Latino area. And I enjoy that work. I like writing about it. I find it interesting. I also like the work I do often on technology studies, other stuff that I've done on misinformation, political disinformation. I recently wrote this piece on what it was like for people to live through the pandemic, the relationship to others, surveillance, and I wrote this with colleagues. A great colleague here, Ariadne Gonzalez, in my department, former colleague at TAMIU, who's now at the University of North Florida, Wanju Shi, and somebody I met online who I've never even met in person in Massachusetts named Cal Moody. Came together to work on this project because we had collected this cool data about students' experiences like during the pandemic.
Right.
Like seeing their friends out on social, posting when they were out. And why I bring this project up is because we had the opportunity, I think, to really think a little bit more deeply about culture, our culture in the United States, and where we're at in this moment. The pandemic was this crazy thing that we all lived through, right?
Yes.
And I think it revealed a lot. It pushed us all to see life in a different way. We all experienced what it's like to have to stay home, right? To not be able to go to work or have to work from
Right.
home or be isolated from others. And that's something that we're still, I think, grappling with altogether. But as we're coming out of it, we're kind of having this moment where we're like, all right, I want to go out and do all these things. I want to travel. I want to spend. I want to party, whatever. And so this piece, I think, was a cool opportunity to kind of theorize what do some of those cultural formations mean for politics, for consumption, for business. And so that was a fun paper to write in the sense that it was the more intellectually challenging.
Yes. Yeah.
I think something that students may not see is that after a while, when you become a professor and you're focused on doing grants and publications and classes, it can get a little, not monotonous, but formulaic. I'll put it that way, right? There's intro, 3 parts of the intro, right?
Yeah.
Literature review. Here are the sources that I always cite, right? There's a structure that's
Yeah.
there for a reason because it's easy to read once you've done it a while. But it can feel a little repetitive sometimes.
Yes.
Grant I'm sure you've filled them out, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
It's the same stuff over and over again.
Yeah.
Copying, moving stuff over, stuff like that. So once in a while, we get an opportunity, I think, to push ourselves intellectually to think about a topic and think deeply about it, read different things. And that's kind of the true promise of being a professor, like being able to sit and think and read and talk about things, big ideas, try to make sense of the world as it's changing. And unfortunately for me, recently it's been rare, and I've been telling myself I just want to spend a year just reading books again and reading. I feel like I don't get that time anymore. But this is one project where I really had the chance to do that. I'm very proud of it because of that. And it's in a great place now. It's actually not in a communication journal, but hey, cool, worked out well, and so it was a good chance to sit back and think a little bit more, which I think is the ultimate goal of what we're trying to do here, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Do you know where students can read it? Like,
Yeah, I mean, it's available. The journal is called Consumption, Markets, and Culture. It's kind of a more cultural focused marketing journal. I think I've emailed it to a couple colleagues too, obnoxiously, just like, hey, check out this recent article. But I'll probably teach it in a future class at some point and stuff like that. So I remember I showed it in class and they were like, it's super long. It got like to 10,000 words because of reviewers wanting things in it. And they were like, you wrote that? And I was like, yeah, I guess I did. I didn't realize it was getting that long, but it did. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I'm going to ask you another question. This one's actually more like from me rather than from an audience.
Sure.
Like for our grant, you do these summer workshops. You talk about your digital presence, right? And your LinkedIn, you do have what I would call a check mark. I forgot what you call it on LinkedIn, but AOC.
Yeah.
What was it? I forgot what it's called.
Like it's something where like you endorse each other for skills.
It was endorsing. Yeah. I saw AOC endorse you. How did that happen?
Just knowing each other from a long time ago.
Really?
And back in those days, and this is something I always advise students to do, like with their LinkedIn's, is endorse your friends for things that you think they're good at, because later down the road you just never know, and also it's just good practice to be on there.
Yeah.
I've gotten more interested in LinkedIn recently, and I've been kind of following along as I see people talking about their experience being like laid off from tech industry jobs.
Yeah.
Super interesting. I think it's a good source of data. Actually, I'm kind of thinking about maybe doing a study on just LinkedIn culture, because it is this like very interesting place where it's like humble braggy.
Yeah.
Right. Like I see you there post there a lot on it too, and not that I'm saying you're a humble bragger, but it's the norm of the platform.
Yeah, it is.
Right. Like on Instagram, you post your travel pictures.
Yeah.
Right. On TikTok, you post your funny stuff. Right. Twitter, it's memes or whatever, news. Something about LinkedIn promotes this, like, I'm humbled and honored to get this award about whatever thing.
To me, it's always been like when I even posted my promotion, right?
Yeah.
I felt a little bit cringy. I was like, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
But it was like, I am humbled to announce.
Yeah.
That I am. And I'm like, why am I doing this? But everybody does it.
Everybody
that's
does
the
it.
culture there.
Yeah.
And like there's a lot of memes around it, right? Like when you're on LinkedIn, that you're just like humble bragging.
Humble bragging.
To not use another word, right? But
it is one thing that we talk about in media studies and communication is like these platform affordances, right? What are the cultures associated with each of these platforms, and how does the way it's designed or architected encourage these particular behaviors? Something about LinkedIn does that, right? I don't really understand it well enough to say what it is, but it's like the brag site.
Yeah.
And it makes sense because you look at people's experience and records to decide if you're going to hire them or not. So anyway, that's what's on there. So just old friends, long time ago, and didn't know what we were doing. Again, did not know what was happening at the time.
Exactly.
Right? That's life, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think students sometimes feel like you have to have everything planned out.
Right.
Like, by this age, I'm going to do this. By this age, I'm going to do that. If you'd asked me at 32 if I would be college professor in Laredo, Texas, no idea that would be the case, right?
Yeah.
But you take it a couple days at a time. You take it months. It's good to plan, of course, like have a goal, right? Right now my goal is to get tenure, so planning that.
Yeah.
Right? There's steps to get there. But life is interesting, right? It takes you in different directions in unexpected ways, and you should have broad kind of goals and ambitions. Do the best job you can when you're at, be respectful and stuff like that. But it's okay to not have it all figured out.
Yes.
Right? There's no, there's no rush.
Yeah.
Like, and sometimes you end up, burning yourself out or feeling exhausted from trying to have it all figured out. So anyway.
I'm glad you really said that, because I think a lot of students who might be listening, they might be thinking that we should have it figured out, and maybe at the age of 21, you should already know everything you're going to do, but it's not really like that. And
no.
Like, you've shared your experiences to show that.
Yeah. It's less about having it figured out and doing something, right? I think sometimes what people say is, I don't know what I want to do. I haven't figured it out yet. And that can sometimes be an excuse to not do something, to not take that next step. Of course, you have to be thoughtful and think about, what taking that next step involves and really commit yourself to. But there is something, I think, from just learning by doing, learning from mistakes, and doing something and realizing it's not for you and changing course. It's okay.
Yeah.
But kind of staying stationary or staying in the same spot, you could wake up and then you haven't done it and you haven't done anything, right? And so I think, and especially as I feel like, moving from my 20s into my 30s, you just have less time to do things.
Yeah.
Right? There's just more and more demands on your time. I'm sure it gets crazier too. So, thinking about, okay, what step can I take to do better at whatever I'm doing now? Whether it's, if I'm in school, if I'm a B student, how can I become an A student? If I'm at this particular job, do I see a path for career advancement there? One thing we've talked about is like just getting skills.
Yes.
Right, while we're here, right? And so, like, I push on my students, go get certified in Google Analytics. Go learn how to do design work. Go how to something that will make you more marketable out there in the field. We're about to see a huge retirement of people, who are in the baby boomer generation.
Yes.
And we're seeing kind of these elements in our economy where there's mismatches of jobs and skills because of the demographics, because of the pandemic, all these huge social changes. And I think young people right now are really well positioned to move into roles that they might not have thought they could have a couple of years ago. Now, as millennials, we were kind of screwed for a couple of years because of the recession and being left behind. And I see 20-year-olds now who are moving from part-time to full-time jobs, with skills that I didn't get till like 25, 26, 27. So go out and get those skills now. They're out there on the internet. That complements what you've learned in school: reading, writing, showing up on time, in the basics, right? That's what a college degree shows to me. Can you show up on time? Can you do stuff on time, right?
Yeah.
That's why employers like it.
Exactly.
The knowledge you'll learn later, or you'll pick up. You have to relearn, right? So if you can do that now, while you have the time, and then keep pushing forward, doing stuff, getting yourself out there, you'll figure out what you're meant to do later. There's a great podcast I like. I mentioned a little bit before we started, and the guy says, "Don't follow your passion. Like, do something. Find something you're decent at or good at. Then you'll become passionate about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like." Nobody sets out to become a tax accountant, right? Like, that's not what little kids dream of.
Exactly.
But if you listen to the best tax accountants in the world, they're passionate about it.
Yes.
Because they spent so much time and they know it in and out that they've become good at it, right? And then they have time to do their hobbies on the side, right? And so I didn't think I'd become a professor, but now that I'm learning more and more about it, knowing what could be improved in the field, in our institutions, I care about it. And you get better at it. So find something you're decent at, get really good at it, then you'll care about it, versus the other way around. So sometimes maybe we mix up those messages.
Yeah. I think that's
long answer to a short story.
No, that was excellent advice, for the students who might be listening, or even anybody else,
Yeah.
I mean, you kind of just like ignited something in me that
Good.
I probably didn't even
Awesome.
know.
I'm always glad to see. I've seen you growing a lot too, man, over the last
Thank
couple of years, and it's really exciting to see, young people. And I say young people, like them, not super old, but see other young people growing, developing, becoming the leaders of our country, our community, that we're going to need to have in the next couple of years, because things are changing. So absolutely. Yeah.
Well, I think that's a good note to end on. Thank you, Dr. Sotoskis. This was our second episode of the Dustdevils Coffee Hour. We'll see you guys next time.